Alright, this is what we have to start out with. This is a maple log that came out of my mother-in-law's yard. It's from a tree that had to be cut down that her husband had planted years ago, and she wanted something made out of this that she could set up in her house and remember him by. This has a lot of checking. When I cut this log up, I painted the end of it to minimize that, but it has done it anyway. You can see there's another one pretty severe right there, and this smaller chunk has some checking in it as well. I'm not going to be able to use a whole lot out of that, and some more here and some more in that end, but we're going to turn that along with this. I believe this is cherry. I've got a few board feet of that. I'm going to make a jewelry box for her out of this maple, the drawer fronts and the lid. I believe I can get enough out of that to make the drawer fronts and the lid. I'm going to try to get a straight line, something to reference off of, and then cut off over here. I've got to get it down to 6 inches, but I want to save that full 6 inches, and we'll eliminate this checking. By cutting it off, I need 10 inches out of this. Not a lot, but I think we're going to get enough. These are still roughly about 7/8 of an inch thick, and these are, oh, these are an inch thick, and these two narrower boards are about 7/8 of an inch thick. Everything's going to be tucked down to 3/4, and some of it to 1/2 inch. But that is what I've salvaged so far. But I want to show you this hidden treasure that was found in the pile of this, and I'm going to mill these out and make the drawer fronts out of this. These two pieces here, they are bookmarked. I believe I can get a drawer front out of that and out of each one. I've jointed one face of each one of these, and what my plan is, which actually those two sides are pretty nice too, but I want this pattern, if I can keep it without it getting cut away. So what my plan is to send each piece on this side up, referencing off my flat jointed side, send each piece through the planer and cut down until I'm flat all the way across the top of both of these. And then whatever is left of this pattern, that's what we'll have. Once I get a flat side on this one, I'll flip them over and start cutting away from this side to get my thickness that I need, leaving all that I can of this. Alright, these two pieces have been brought down on this side as far as I'm going to go. They're flat. All my pencil marks are gone. This is a crack. This one is pretty deep. Probably what I'll have to do to keep this board from splitting is fill this up with epoxy. Alright, now it's time to address this crack. And the way we're going to do that is mix up some epoxy. Takes equal parts for this. And I've selected some golden oak stain. I'm going to put just a few drops of that in this to give it color. It will make it take a little longer about setting up, but it will not stop it from setting up. Trying to pile that up right on top of that seam. That way it will go down into that crack some, and I may even try to force it down into that crack. It doesn't matter what gets on the outside of it, it will all be sanded down. And shove it right down into that crack. Now it's time to cut up some of this cherry. Joint one side of this, and this wood had been laying in a barn, to my understanding, for probably 2 years, maybe 3, I don't know, but it's got that rustic look on the outside, and as that peels off, we won't have to mark this with a pencil because we'll know exactly what's been done and what's not. I'll show you what this looks like when you get done jointing on the face of it as it takes that off. Now we're ready to glue up some panels. There's 2 pieces of cherry. They are 3/4 of an inch thick, and I have selected the best grain pattern that kind of matches between these 2 pieces, where everything kind of comes together and gives it a one-piece feel, even though it's actually 2 pieces of board. Alright, our panels are all glued up, and this right here is just kind of a mock-up to get an idea how what would contrast with the other in what positions. And I'm thinking that this 1/2 inch stock cherry, I have 3 pieces of that I've milled down to a 1/2 inch thick. I'm thinking I will use that in the bottom of this. Pay no attention to that piece of paper that's laying there. But I will use that as the bottom, and this will be maple on top. It will have a maple front on it, and then cherry in the back. So the sides and the back will be cherry, and the top and the front and the drawers will be made out of maple. For the drawer fronts, the construction of the drawers themselves will probably be cherry too, because I do not have enough maple. Alright, since our back panels have glued up, we need to square up. You see I've marked a line along this. This lets me know that this is the bottom. This is going to be a 1/2 inch rabbet, and there'll be a 1/2 inch rabbet across the back of it. This will be the back. We're going to square these up on both panels before we cut our final width and depth for the box. This is going to be the right side. This is the left side. I've got it clamped up in my tapering jig, which is going to give me a straight line when I run that through that saw. It's going to give me a straight line here, and then we'll do this one, and then we will do the back of each one same way and get 2 square sides, and then we'll measure and cut our final dimensions for the left and right side of the box out of this cherry stock. We didn't take off much, but that leaves us with a straight surface to reference off of. Now we've got to cut this back side. Alright, so what we've done now, we've come to the router table. We're going to use the router to put a rabbet along the bottom of this and up the back. That will allow our bottom to set up in this for stronger gluing, and also the back. And I've already put a rabbeting bit in it. If you see, it's got a bearing on top of it, and that bearing will stop the stock from going any closer than just to it, which at the tip of this cutter head to that bearing is exactly 3/8. And this is 3/4 inch stock, and half of it is 3/8, so that is exactly the depth that we want. We want to go halfway into it, and we're going to go 1/2 inch in depth. So that's where we get to use this. I built this just a few weeks ago. It's a depth gauge. 1/2 inch is what we're wanting. And I have a 1/2 inch protruding out the top. Double check just to make sure I haven't moved. Now that is a 1/2 inch off. This is a 1/2 inch off of the base of the router table. And we don't want to go to the top of that bearing when we're measuring. We want to go right to the top of that cutter head. That's where business is going to be getting taken care of. And we just bring that up till it touches it and lock it down. Let me show you what I got it set up here now. This will help ensure that I get a good clean cut, not only a good clean cut, but a safe cut, which is most important. I've got my, if you can see it, it's kind of dark in there. I've got my bit set up to where I'm only going to be taking about 3/16 of an inch or so. I'll take at least 2 passes, if not 3. I'll keep moving the fence back to keep getting until I get that 3/8 of an inch cut. Fence is going to block the piece on this side. This coil is going to block it on this side. I got a feather board holding pressure directly at the bit to make it stay flat and smooth, and this right here is going to guide it, and I also got that clamped down. So we get ready to cut. So much of our rabbet as of right now. You can see, using that homemade depth gauge, it is right on the money. But you see how those joints come out rabbeted. That is a very strong joint, and that's basically what the inside and the bottom and the back. I've got to make the panel for the back. That's what it looked like. That will all be made out of cherry, and then the rest of it will be made out of maple. Alright, now we've got our sides cut down to their final dimensions. They're a lot smaller. Just see the rabbit on the back and across the bottom, same on this piece. These will sit like this, and this one will be right here. Maybe those will stand. These boards have to be edged and glued together into a panel, and then they will be cut off even with that rabbit right there all across over here. And then another panel will be made to rest in this rabbit all the way across the height and width of this to fill in the back. And then that will have a back, bottom, and both sides made out of cherry for this box. And then we will get to start working some on maple. Alright, now that we have our bottom panel glued up, we're going to, I've got it already in my tapering jig. I'm going to run that along the edge of the blade, just skimming it to straighten this edge here up, and then we'll get out the table saw sled and cut one end off square, and it'll give us 2 square corners to reference off of, and then we'll cut it down to our final length and then joint the other side, and that will make our bottom panel for our box. Now that gives us 2 completely square references, and now we'll cut our final length. Now we need to cut the final length, or final width actually, of this will be our bottom panel. We've got both of our sides. I've got 2 edges, the front and the left hand side, squared up. And the way we're going to figure out where this needs to be cut off to put this panel is, we know we want the overall width of the box 10 inches. So we have our rabbits cut in this, that this panel is going to sit back in. So our actual measurements, this would be on the outside of the box. Well, actually this is the outside of the box, but for thickness matters, this is the outside of the box. And we have a 3/8 inch rabbit cut into each one that panel is going to go into. This is the way that I come up with that measurement, which you can actually do it in your head. 3/8 and 3/8 is 3/4. 3/4 from 10 inches is 9 1/4. But if I go to this side of the line, at the 10 inch mark, it tells me that 9 1/4 is what I need my panel. But that way, when it is put in between these 2 grooves, 9 1/4, there's my other 3/4 making my 10 inches.